Online, Lhamo led an idyllic life. She often posted videos of herself harvesting herbs, cooking, and singing to her adoring 800,000 followers on social media. But offline, her personal circumstances were nowhere near as sunny as they appeared in her videos. On September the 14th, 2020, while live streaming to her loyal followers, Lhamo was stabbed, doused in gasoline, and set on fire by her ex-husband, and passed away a few weeks later as a result of her injuries. The news went viral on Chinese social media, triggering massive outrage over the problem of gender-based domestic violence and toxic relationships in China. Lhamo was greatly adored by her large and growing social media following. What garnered so much attraction was her genuine and sweet personality, making her so likable and a breath of fresh air. So what possible reason did her ex-husband have to attack her so callously? Her case also acquired nationwide attention, bringing to light the shortcomings in China's legal system that does little to discourage domestic violence. Who was Lhamo, and what was her narrative? Join me today as we travel to the southwestern province of Tibet, China. With an average of only 2 people per square kilometre, Tibet has the lowest population density among any of the Chinese province-level administrative regions, mostly due to its harsh and rugged terrain. Located on the north side of the Himalayas, Tibet is nicknamed Roof of the World for its towering peaks and record of being the highest region on Earth, with an average elevation of 4,380 metres. Fun fact: Mount Everest sits right at the very border of Tibet and Nepal and has base camps on each side. The Tibetans refer to Mount Everest as Chamalangma, which means Goddess Mother of the Earth, while the Nepalese call it Sagamatha, which means forehead in the sky. Many tourists visit these base camps for a glimpse of the highest point in the world, as well as climbers who wish to scale this majestic mountain. I hope to one day enjoy this unrivaled beauty in the flesh. To the unassuming city dweller spinning the wheels in the grind that is life, the Tibetan lifestyle, with its picturesque landscape and rich ethnic culture, would be something to be envious about. But scratch the surface and you'd probably think twice before substituting your life for a Tibetan. It would be an understatement to say that life in Tibet is challenging. Due to its harsh climate, Tibetans are among the poorest people in Asia, with many living without electricity and running water. Despite some improvements in recent years, poverty remains widespread. 34% of the population live in extreme poverty, and agriculture is the only significant source of income. Sadly, Lhamo was among this disheartening statistic. She and her older sister Dalmo were raised in poverty by their parents, and like most Tibetans, they only had one name. Lhamo was described by many as a smart, outgoing woman. She never finished primary school and instead followed her calling to Nawa, where she made a living in the mountains as a Tibetan farmer. Several years later, Lhamo met her future husband Tang in a nearby village when they were teenagers and began dating at the age of 17. They married in 2009 when she was just 18 and had 2 children together. Tang, like Lhamo, also dropped out of primary school and worked a series of casual jobs. Tang's family ran a tea house, and Lhamo worked there when she was not picking herbs with her father. In 2018, she began documenting her life on Douyin, the Chinese version of TikTok. It was her bright smile and rural lifestyle that captivated city dwellers and earned her more than 770,000 followers. Going by the name Lhamo, she regularly posted cheerful videos of her rural life in the mountains, featuring lip-syncing to songs she liked, cooking, dancing, spending time with her family, and showing fans the nature in her mountainous hometown. She was admired for her natural beauty and energetic attitude. She was admirably candid with her videos, showing the dirt on her clothes and her poor living conditions. Her Douyin account description said, quote, "It's not that I don't like city life, but I want to be by my father's side. So I need to rely on the mountains to earn an income. I want to share the treasures of the mountains with more people." End quote. In one video post, she explained in the caption why her hands were cracked and dirty. She said, I have the face of a 30-year-old, but the hands of a 50-year-old. Don't criticize me for the dirty hands. I use my hands to make money. And when a follower asked, "Did you not wash your hands?" Lhamo's reply was blunt: "No water." Lhamo's work reflected a life that revolved around the seasonal harvest of chowho, a bitter herb used in Chinese medicine to treat symptoms of a range of diseases. During chowho season, she would spend days at an altitude of 4,300 meters with her father, who sometimes appeared in her videos. They lived in makeshift huts in the wild. She cooked noodles, potatoes, and sampa, a cereal-like Tibetan staple made of barley and flour. It was possible to find fast food, even in rural areas of Tibet. Lhamo's favorite fast food was a dish adored by millions of Chinese. One day, in a video of a herb-picking trip in October, Lhamo showed off this fast food. The meal consisted of rice and pork that was self-heating. It came in a box containing a chemical mixture that is heated when water is added. She said the dish was as luxurious as a big banquet in the city, claiming to always feeling so hungry in the wild. Her videos offered a window into her life. To her audience, this window was full of picturesque scenery, a rural life picking herbs, walking through the mountains, cooking dinner and working around the house where she lived with a husband and 2 children. What the window didn't reveal was her abusive husband. The first clue to this was in her videos. In addition to her father, Lhamo's sister and 2 sons occasionally appeared in her posts. But one person was noticeably absent: her husband. Tang started assaulting Lhamo soon after they were married. And the beatings didn't just happen at home, but overtly in the streets too. The violence only intensified after the death of Lhamo's mother. She was the only one who would defend her daughter against Tang. Sometimes Lhamo would seek refuge at a relative's home to recover from her injuries as a result of Tang's physical abuse. One of these injuries included a dislocated elbow and a broken arm. It was during these times that her sister Dolma began to notice a bruising on Lhamo's body and face. Lhamo was reluctant to talk to anybody about it. It was humiliating and not the Chinese way. You may be wondering why she didn't report him to law enforcement. Sadly, she did, twice, only to be rebuffed because it was a family matter. According to traditional Chinese culture, family matters are kept private, and the Chinese government's position on domestic violence against women is weak. Authorities and the police have long regarded domestic violence as a family matter that should be dealt with privately, and China only criminalized it in 2016. Despite these advances, women's advocates say domestic abuse is frequently treated as a private family matter, with authorities either reluctant or refusing to get involved. Therefore, the issues remained pervasive and underreported, especially in underdeveloped rural communities such as the one Lhamo was living in. The newly enacted abuse law also had major omissions, such as excluding same-sex couples and cases of sexual violence. Eventually, the abuse got so bad that Lhamo confided in her sister, who tried to talk Tang into stopping but had no success. One day, Tang went looking for Lhamo, and when Dolma refused to disclose her location, Tang punched her in the face and broke her jaw, hospitalizing her for 2 weeks. Dolma reported the incident to the police. While Dolma was being treated in hospital, Tang was called into the police station for questioning, but walked out a free man that same day. Lhamo divorced Tang in March 2020, but he immediately pushed her to remarry, threatening to kill their children if she refused. Lhamo called the police on 2 occasions, but they ignored her. 2 weeks later, she went to the police again after another round of physical assault. This time, the authorities responded, but not in the way you'd think. Their response to her was that since she had chosen to remarry him, this was her personal family matter. China is a society that disapproves of divorce and encourages the victims to stay silent. Police officers are not adequately trained to deal with domestic abuse cases, especially in Tibet. In May of that same year, Tang went on another abusive rampage. He tried to choke Lhamo and threatened her with a knife. Lhamo's life was in grave danger. She was desperate for protection and knew the police wouldn't help her. She sought help from the local chapter of the All China Women's Federation, the government agency in charge of protecting women's rights. Sadly, officials dismissed Lhamo, saying that other women were worse off. It had become clear that Lhamo had exhausted all her options and was now at a dead end. Having no other choice, she decided to divorce Tang a second time and hide among relatives while she anxiously awaited court approval. The divorce was granted a few weeks later, but for reasons unknown, Tang was harrowingly granted full custody of their two sons, who were aged 12 and 2 at the time. Despite the court rulings, the only thing Lhamo could do was remain hopeful that her boys would not be injured. Lhamo resumed life in her father's home, deep in the mountains, picking herbs and continuing to post light-hearted videos on her social media. 2 months had passed, and Lhamo's life looked to have turned a page. That was until September the 14th, 2020. In the evening of that summer night, shortly after 8 p.m, Lhamo logged into Douyin for what would be the last time and began a livestream in her father's kitchen. Over 400 people had tuned in to watch. She had just returned from a trip to the mountains. She was wearing traditional Tibetan clothes and singing the song in Mandarin about the hospitality of her people. Suddenly, a man stormed into the kitchen. Lhamo screamed, and then the screen went dark. Lhamo's father and brother-in-law, who were sleeping in another room, were awoken by Lhamo's shrieks for help. They ran to the kitchen to find Lhamo doused in gasoline and set on fire. The house caught fire and exploded as they ran to call the police and ask for help. Her father rushed her to the hospital. She was barely breathing and in a critical condition. Lhamo was immediately transferred to the intensive care unit and placed into a medically induced coma. She had burns to 90% of her body. Her sister described her as looking like a piece of charcoal, with almost all of her skin burnt off. A harrowing experience for any family member to witness. Her Douyin account was silent for 2 days until her sister posted about the attack. She made a desperate plea for financial help, asking the public to save Lhamo. Around 1 million yuan was donated to the family. Lhamo tragically died 2 weeks later, on September the 30th, 2020 at 9 p.m. At just 30 years old, her life was cruelly and abruptly cut short, leaving behind 2 young boys without a mother, and closing the window to the Tibetan lifestyle for her adoring followers. 3 months later, on December the 10th, 2020, Tang was arrested on suspicion of murder. The case was heard in court, and he was found guilty of homicide. As punishment, he was sentenced to death and ordered to pay compensation. It was determined that his crime was extremely cruel and deserving of severe punishment by the court. The reasons for the abuse are unknown, so I'll leave it to you to draw your own conclusions, and I apologise for the untied loose ends. Lhamo's gruesome case, unfortunately, was one of many that attracted national attention, emphasising the inadequacies of China's legal systems in protecting women from domestic violence, even when they repeatedly requested assistance, as Lhamo had done. I want to expand on my earlier comment about enacting criminal abuse laws in 2016. China was a latecomer to having legal interpretation of family violence. It wasn't until 2001 that physical abuse could be considered a reason to file for divorce, and only in 2016 did China's first anti-domestic violence law come into effect. But it had loopholes. It covered married couples, cohabitating partners, and other family members, but it did not deal with violence against former spouses or intimate partners who do not live together. As recently as 2019, a woman from Henan province plunged to her death from a second-story window in order to escape domestic violence. The jump left her paralysed, But when she tried to end her marriage, a local court denied her divorce petition, citing her partner's interest in continuing the relationship. After Lhamo's murder, the Chinese citizens called for a vigorous enforcement of domestic violence. Supporters flooded Lhamo's Douyin page with tens of thousands of comments grieving her death, and millions of people on the social media site Weibo called for justice using hashtags Lhamo and Lhamo died after being set on fire by her ex-husband. A Weibo post calling for a hashtag Lhamo bill to protect women from similar violence was shared more than 211,000 times. But the hashtag, along with several others relating to the Tibetan woman, was soon censored. After reading this and all the research, I am starting to believe that the culture is still stronger than the law, because in rural areas and other places where knowledge of the law is not that high, officers, the police, and even doctors still have the attitude, yes, this is a family matter. The story of Lhamo is depressingly familiar. For years, she tried to extradite herself from an abusive relationship repeatedly, and when she eventually did, she forfeited her rights to any protection from the Chinese government. The system had failed her, and this is what made Lhamo the perfect victim. Lhamo was cremated, and her ashes were scattered in a river near the village where she lived. Dolma took over Lhama's Douyin account, posting updates on her family situation and tearful farewell messages to her sister. In one of her posts, she said, "I'm sorry. A year has passed and I still can't give you an explanation. The most I've been able to do is protect those you cared about and loved. In the next life, I'll be your older brother and protect you well. Rest in peace, little sister." Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to the channel. Take care everyone, and I'll see you in the next video.